League is a very complicated game, and in my opinion, the easiest way to learn how to play better is to simplify the game as much as possible and focus only on what's important. So today we are going through all phases of the game, and I'll show you the most common mistakes that people make. And I want you to recognize that you make those mistakes and turn them into a good habit. I'll show you how to turn them into a good habit. And why do I say good habits? Well, because habits are something you do automatically without thinking about it. And that's what you want to do. You want to make the game as simple as possible for you. You want to have some solid habits that you do every game, and you know you can rely on those habits to always make the correct decision. So let's get started with champ select. Most people overthink their champion. They say, I should be playing this champion because this champion is meta, but I like that other champion. What should I do? First, I would say you should pick a champion that you enjoy the most and play that champion. Simple as that. If you like multiple champions, you can play a couple more champions. No worries, right? But usually I tell people to just pick one or two and that's it, because playing multiple champions will make you less consistent. And what you want in League is consistency, good habits, and that's how you don't make mistakes, because the way to climb this league is to make less mistakes than your opponent. It's as simple as that. What you should be thinking instead in champ select is the summoner spell you take, right? Because the champion, ADC especially, you can play in a bad matchup, no problem, because bot lane, the matchup is usually decided by the support anyway. So let's talk about the options you have. First of all, of course, you want to take the flash, of course, but then you have to choose between like Ghost, Heal, Cleanse or Exhaust, right? So let's talk about Ghost. Ghost usually is great in every single game, most of the time. If you take Ghost, you're probably not making a mistake, because ADCs want mobility, right? They have no dashes most of the time, so speed is great. But then in some games there are some exceptions. First exception is Cleanse. Okay, when do we take Cleanse? Let's say they have Maokai, Ashe, Twisted Fate, Varus, Leora, or something similar. That's when you should definitely take Cleanse, every game without fail. And we're going to talk about that in a bit, why it's so important to have Cleanse in those matchups. Let's talk about Heal and Exhaust now. So let's say you are in a lane where they don't really have hard CC, but they just have a lot of early game power. Well, in those games you might want to consider Exhaust and Heal as a way to deal with those early game threats, so you actually have more combat power, because Ghost is better in the late game, but early game is not that useful, right? So you have to make a decision if you want to play for the early game or for the late game. It's up to you. Generally, especially Ghost, I don't really recommend taking, because if you are fighting in a melee range or exhaust range as an ADC, you are most likely doing something wrong already. You want to stay at your max range most of the time, right? That's just how it is. But again, up to you. Early game or late game, it's your choice. Moving over to the loading screen, most people here just scroll the social media, they watch TikToks, YouTube shows, whatever, right? They're not thinking about the game. Loading screen is valuable time you're wasting. Why? Well, let's look at the bot matchup first of all, right? Most players look at bot lane and they think, okay, these guys are long range, okay, we stay safe, that's it, right? They don't think about anything else. Okay, let's take an example of Jinx and Blitzcrank versus Draven Nautilus, for example, right? We just want to simplify the game as much as possible and think about what's really important. In this case, when we look at Draven Nautilus, we know Nautilus has a hook, and Draven just has a lot of basic attack damage, right? That's kind of it. Nothing else really matters. We don't care about Draven W speed, or we don't care about Nautilus shield. Those things don't matter to us. What matters is Nautilus hook, basically. That's kind of it, right? When it comes to Jinx Blitz, we have the Blitzcrank hook into the Jinx chompers, right? That's kind of what we have. That's it, right? The Jinx W, for example, it doesn't matter, right? Nobody cares. We only care about that Blitz hook and the Jinx chompers. Nothing else really matters, right? So I want you to simplify your matchups as much as possible. And that's important because let's say Nautilus misses the hook. Now we know, hey, we could actually go in. They don't have their strongest ability and we have ours. We can go in, we win. And now let's go back to Cleanse. Let's say you took Cleanse into Leona. Usually Leona's strongest abilities are like the EQ engage, right? She goes on you and then stuns you. Well, if you have Cleanse, you can pretty much ignore that. If your support finds a good engage, for example, their Blitzcrank, you would usually be afraid to kind of go because, look, the Leona's gonna turn on me, she's gonna stun me, they turn on me, right? Well, if you have Cleanse, that's not a problem anymore. You can just follow up your hook, you can go in. If Leona stuns you, you cleanse instantly, you're good to go. Perfect. Also in the loading screen, what to think about what should you do with your first 3 waves, pretty much, right? And we're going into that a bit later when we talk about the early game. First, we need to talk about where should you be staying at level 1. Most players, I'll show you on the map right here, right? Let's say we are playing Jinx this game, okay? Most players would stay in this tribush with their blue side, or they would stay here if they're red side, right? You would argue like, that's fine, that's good enough, right? If they invade, we can see them. Well, let's say we stay in this tribush here, and the enemies invade from bot like this, okay? They come through here like that, and guess what? When they come through here and you stay in the tribush, you don't see them. You only see them when it's too late. And imagine they have Blitzcrank. You're just dead. You have to flash, you have to run away, you can't run away, you have to flash or something, right? That's why sitting here is not good. Same with this side. If they invade through here, you will not be able to see them until it's too late, right? So what you should be doing instead, you should either go here or here, right? Blue side here, red side here, that's very safe. You can see enemies when they want to invade, you can see them from all sides, this is very safe. Also here, if they invade through here, you instantly see them, you just back off, you're safe, right? But if your support doesn't want to stay down here, right, and you can stay up here because somebody else is guarding the entrance, like your support is here, okay? What you want to do is walk up here. Don't stay in the tribush, just walk up in the river, touch the water, and just move back and forth like this, so you can actually see behind this little pixel brush, right? And if you are here moving like this, no matter where they're invading from the tribush, from the bot lane, from the river here, you see them instantly at your max vision range, which means you can just back off and they never have time to catch up to you, see? They never have time to catch up to you. You are completely safe. But again, if you stay in the tribush, they're just gonna get on top of you without you having any chance at escaping. And this is when you're blue side, when you're red side, do the opposite. You come here and you just wiggle your toes in the water right here. And that's what you do. They cannot invade you. You are safe. If they flash hook you, for example, you just trade your flash. That's okay, no problem, right? All good. Also, a lot of you might be tempted to just come from base level 1 and just place a ward down here, right? A lot of you would do this, then you just walk back with your teammates around here, right? While this sounds great on paper, if they invade from anywhere, you just see them, there's a ward, you see them, right? Sounds great on paper, but what that does is it makes it so you don't have a ward in laning anymore, right? On bot lane in the early game, you share the responsibility with your support of warding. Both of you have that responsibility of using your trinkets to ward. And if you waste one trinket here, and then let's say your support in lane, the enemy support wants to contest this brush, for example, your support wants to place a ward here, right? Now what's gonna happen is this ward is gonna expire. So we're going to delete this. And now guess what? The enemy jungler, after they clear their red buff, they could do this blue buff, they could come and crop. And now they just gank you for free from anywhere. They can do whatever they want to you, right? You're just dead. You can do anything. But imagine we didn't place that level 1 ward. We push this level to minion wave, or like the second minion wave. And then we just walk up in the river while Udyr is doing gromp. We place the ward down here, okay? We go back to lane. And now Udyr is kinda, he's coming here no matter where he's coming from, unless he goes all the way around like this, which nobody really does. And chances are your mid laner is gonna spot them with a ward they place here. You just can't. They cannot gank you. And that's because you didn't waste your ward level 1 and you stayed here level 1 where you're supposed to. Another important aspect I want to talk about before minions even arrive on lane is after you leash. A lot of players like to go through here back to lane, right? You shouldn't do this. This is not very safe. Imagine they just cam the brush here and you just get chunked. They just, even worse, if they have a hook, you kind of die, right? You are forced to use your flash. What you should be doing instead, if you should leash down here and then just walk around like this, back to your wave, back to your lane, right? And you might say, great, now they can trap us here. Well, imagine they stuck here now. You should wait around here until they show themselves to farm this wave, right? Because the first 3 minions are almost gonna die and Vayne wants to get them. So she's gonna leave this brush and get those 3 minions. And that's when you actually can walk up and get the minions yourself, right? But you never ever want to walk up to the wave if you don't see the enemies. Chances are they're chasing you here or either here. You just wanna wait. And if the first 3 melee minions die and you don't see your enemies, you still don't wanna walk. Why? Well, they could be smart and wait here for you to walk because they assume, they just know you would assume they are not here, right? So they are gonna wait for you even if those 3 melee minions die and they are gonna kill you here or chunk you. So you just wanna have patience until you see them, you don't walk up, Gotta be careful. Now let's talk about what you should be doing when you arrive to lane. This is something you can think about from loading screen. Basically, most of your games are going to have two options. First one is to get level 2 first and punish your enemies because you're level 2, they're level 1, you have a level advantage, you have an extra ability, so you should fight. Second option, if you're in a harder matchup, you want to back off, let enemies push the wave into you and don't let them do anything with their level 2 advantage. So in the level 2 scenario, let's say in this example, right, in this matchup, we can play for level 2 because we have the higher range and more sustain from Sera. So we are just going to hit the first minion wave quite hard, harder than they do, right? And make sure we don't take the first minion wave so hard that the second one is gonna crash like close to their turret. So we wanna take the first wave, and then when the second wave arrives, hopefully still in the middle, you want to start hitting those first 3 melee minions. And once you get 2 of those melee minions, when the third one is still alive, you want to start walking up already. You wanna start walking up, walk up, hit that minion, walk up, hit minion, walk up. And what this does is it closes the gap between you and the enemy, right? So if you start walking up when one minion is still alive, enemies won't even expect you, right? Enemies might even engage on you. And that's great because now the last minion dies, you're level 2, you can fight. But the worst thing that could happen is you are still sitting behind your minions, you get a third melee, and you get level 2, and then you start walking up. Enemies will walk behind you, or will just walk back. They will walk back, they see you're level 2, right? So this is why it's so important to walk up before you're level 2. Otherwise, you're going to miss this opportunity. And after you do something level 2 here, what you want to do is clear the last 3 remaining caster minions, and then walk up to ward here, right? This is what you want to do. You want to ward here, maybe here, or for example, if your support also has a ward, you're going to ward the tribush, and then your support, you can ping. They will also ward here. So basically, you're just ungankable. They cannot do anything to you anymore. Udyr cannot possibly gank you anymore, right? No matter where they're coming from. And then when it comes to the third wave, now we have options. You can let it push because you might think Udyr is bot, but if you have such a huge lead and you have such good vision, you can keep playing aggressive, crash the wave, get some turret plates, be creative. You can do whatever you want in this lane from this position. And this is something you can do most of your games, especially low ELO, because enemies will never respect your level 2. And now that you know how to walk up before you get level 2, they're going to get surprised, you're going to get their flash, you might even kill them, and you create such a huge advantage for yourself that the enemies can't play at all. And they can't even gank because you have such good vision here, right? Now let's talk about the other situation where they have really strong champions level 1, so you're in a really bad matchup. What you want to do is arrive at lane, of course, gotta watch out for the death brush, right? You just chill here until they show themselves on the wave. And what you want to do is nothing. You just stay here, you wait for them to push, you don't touch the wave. Why don't we touch the wave? Well, the more you attack the enemy minions, the slower the wave is gonna push towards you. Your goal right now is to let the enemies push, so you can grab the minions under your turret safely, right? That's your goal here. Because if you step up here, and you wanna fight here, or you hit the minions and the wave is here, Blitz has so many opportunities to just hook one of you, and you just lose the lane from that. So the smart thing to do is ping your support to back off, and you just wait. You stay in XP range, you grab the XP. If you are a champion that has a long range ability, like a Caitlyn Q, you can farm with Q maybe. Just last hit, of course, but you do not want to hit the minions. You just wanna grab last hit if you can. If not, if Blitzcrank is very scared in sitting in this brush, just grab the XP, not even the XP sometimes. You just wait for them to push the wave. You must have patience. Something else you want to learn in laning phase is tracking the enemy spells. Mostly summoner spells, of course, if they have like a Blitzcrank Q, you wanna track that, it's like around 20 seconds, you wanna play around that. But mostly enemy summoner spells. Let's say you get a good level 2 play, and then the enemies have to flash away. You want to instantly ping the enemy flash in chat, so that after like 3 minutes, for example, you're curious, does this champion have flash or not? Well, you can open your chat, scroll up and see, hey, Lucian flashed minute 3, which means Lucian will only have flash minute 8. And if it's minute 6, you know, hey, we can fight, he doesn't have flash, we can catch him, we can gank him, do whatever. And this is why tracking enemy summoner spells is so important. Now you might be thinking there's a ton of concepts we talked about already, right? And we are only in the early game. Well, it's not that hard to learn these concepts, because the way to learn them is to take them one by one. So let's say today I'm just going to worry about not dying before I get to lane, right? Not getting killed before minions arrive. That's what I worry about today. Tomorrow we think about what to do level 2. Day after tomorrow we think about warding more. Next day we think about pinging more to let our support what we want to do, and so on. You just want to do a thing every day. If you need, you take multiple days on the same concept until they become a habit. And once they become a habit, you do it automatically without thinking about it. And that's the goal in League. Simplify as much as possible, make it as easy as possible for yourself. So I have a couple more habits I want to talk to you about in the early game. And first of all, one of the most important is the triangle rule. Basically, you want to form a triangle with your support, where you and your support are the base of the triangle, and somebody, either the enemy support or the enemy ADC, is the head of the triangle. And this situation is great because you are basically 2v1ing the enemies, because a lot of the times in our ELOs, the enemy ADC will do whatever, and the enemy support will do whatever, something else completely different, right? A lot of the times one of them might be a bit more afraid to play the game, right? So when that happens, you need to recognize that the enemy ADC, for example, is alone ahead, so you're on the same line as your support, and you just wanna punish them. You wanna 2v1 them, right? And the opposite happens when, let's say, your support is sitting behind you. That's when you don't wanna do crazy things, don't wanna be too aggressive, because the enemies might 2v1 you. Next concept is a really simple one. If you look at the map, and your jungle is bot lane, you wanna do things. You wanna set up for a gank, you wanna play aggressive, you wanna do things, especially if they're really close, you wanna start the fight, you wanna bait enemies to go onto you, right? And you can do that because you know your jungler is bot. But if your jungler is top lane, that's when you want to chill, you don't wanna do anything, right? Enemy jungler could be bot, you don't know that, you don't wanna play in a 2v3, you don't wanna get baited, so you just wait. And how do you have such good awareness to always know where the enemy jungler is or your jungler is? Well, let's talk about how to look at the map and how to always remember to look at the map. Because a lot of people, even though they ward, they never notice the enemy on the ward because they never look at the map. They are too focused on what's happening in the lane. So let me tell you a nice habit you can implement already, which is after every single minion wave that you take, you look at the map, right? You kill 6 minions, the wave is gone. Look at the map, see what's up, where's my jungler, what's my minion doing, do you have vision, right? That's what we wanna know. Speaking of looking at the map, let's talk about you playing under the enemy turret, right? If you wanna play under the enemy turret because you're in a good lane, you're winning, what you want to do is make sure you have vision. If you don't have vision, you cannot play under the enemy turret, because what's gonna happen is you play aggressive 2v2, you win, and then the enemy jungler comes, you just die, right? So as a rule, as a good habit, if you want to play past the middle point of the map, of the bot lane, of the lane, you just need to place vision, as deep as possible, of course, right? Otherwise, you cannot do it. Let's talk about mid. In my opinion, mid game is way more important for ADCs compared to the early game. In the early game, supports usually make or break the lane, because they have more power, they have more powerful abilities, more tools, right? But ADCs in the mid game, they shine. That's where being a good ADC player shows. Usually mid game begins when one of the towers falls on bot lane, right? Either your tower or the enemy turret. That's when most of the time ADCs should go mid lane. And then the mid laner should go on bot lane, because most of the time the mid laner has the teleport. So they basically are everywhere, they stay bot and they can teleport to any fight. But you as an ADC, you don't have that. So you just want to stay mid. Mid also is a shorter lane, so it's safer for you, because you are champion without mobility most of the time. So you want to be mid. Sure, there are examples and cases where the mid laner doesn't want to go side lane. That's okay, we can talk about what to do then. But first, let's talk about what you should be doing in mid game. Basically, the game is a turn-based game for you. That's how it is for ADCs. You go mid, you take the wave, then you do something else. Look with your team, do a Drake, whatever. After 30 seconds, you come back to mid, you take the wave, do something else. There you go, that's League of Legends. So simple. You just play a turn-based game. You take the wave, do something else. That's all there is to it. That's how you play ADC. And also, by you taking the mid wave, that means the enemy ADC now has to stay under turret and farm the wave, or they have to go to a fight. So it's like they lose something either way, right? Because if you push first and you prioritize those waves, you can group with your teammates right away and you outnumber the enemies. And this is why, as a rule, you just want to prioritize the mid wave as much as possible. If there's a Drake fight happening, right, and there's a mid wave, you go take that mid wave first. Then you make a decision. Do I join the fight or do I take mid turret now, right? Taking mid wave gives you so many options, you always want to take it. Sure, there are exceptions where taking mid wave is not correct, grouping first is correct, but that happens like 95% of the time. You should just take that mid wave. So you want to go for the option that's most of the time is correct. That's the power of habits. You know that if you do that, most of the time it's just the correct choice. You don't even have to think about it. You get that mid wave. Then you think about doing something else. Now let's talk about tempo, how to play with teammates, and how to extract information from the map so you can make a decision. So when I look at the map, most of the time I only look at 4 things: enemies, allies, objectives, and the mid wave, right? Or the wave your currently supposed to take, usually the mid wave. So if there's a wave to take, you just want to go take that wave, right? That's a simple decision. But once you take that wave, you want to start looking at enemies, what your allies are doing, and what objectives are up. Because if there's a Drake up, you gotta look at the map. Is my jungler bot? Is my mid laner around us, right? Do we have our top laner? How many allies do we have on Drake? And how many enemies could there be on Drake, right? If the number is even, you could decide to join the fight. It's an even fight. If you're stronger, you can take it, no problem, right? But if you know your top laner is top, and the enemy top laner doesn't show, it means they could be a Drake. And when we are talking about tempo, I usually draw imaginary lines in my brain, in my mind. So basically, you draw parallel line to the river, and these are tempo lines. Let's look at the blue team, for example, right? Darius, Jinx, and Karma are on the forward most tempo line, right? They are on tempo, they are interacting with the enemies, right? There's contesting waves, clashing, whatever. Then Talia is on the second front, like second tempo line, and then Senna is in the even worse tempo line, which is back here, right? So what you want to do as a team is to have one single tempo line. It means you are playing together no matter what, because you're all doing something actively to just win the game, right? So that's your goal. Now, as a rule, if you are on the tempo line and your allies are not, what you want to do is to just chill and wait for your teammates to make their way up. Wait for your teammates, right? So now, look at the situation. We are on the same tempo line, while, the enemies could be, split. In this case, enemies are on 2 tempo lines, the middle one and this one where we deal is, right? So right now we are playing 5 versus 4. This is how I see the game. It's very, very simple. You just count enemies. That's all there is to it, right? And it's exactly the opposite if your allies are on the tempo line. They are doing things, interacting with the enemy, and you are not. What you want to do is, let's say there's a Drake fight happening, right? And people are just on Drake. You don't really know where the enemies are, and I want to say this, that when you don't know where an enemy is, you assume them to be on the tempo. That's how you should do it, right? So if you are not on tempo, what you want to do is get on tempo as soon as possible, right? Be it you go mid, you go Drake fight, right? You just want to do something as soon as possible. Usually the shortest path is the correct decision. In this case, maybe you want to join the Drake fight because your teammates are there, hopefully making time. If not, you go mid and you just start hitting this turret, okay? Maybe that's better in this case. But it's up to you to decide. What's important is that you get out there as soon as possible. Because if you're here, you're not doing anything, you're AFK. Worst thing you could do is go towards Drake and start farming those raptors. And then by the time you're here, we're too late, right? You don't want that. Another thing I want to mention is that you should always commit to your decisions. For example, here, let's say Senna goes toward blindly for whatever is in their jungle, and she gets caught by a Blitzcrank hook, right? Boom, she's out. Okay. Now, if you look at the map and you analyze the situation, you have 4 of your allies around Baron. Let's say Baron is up, and like a couple enemies are here because you saw them kill Senna, and a couple of them are just missing. They could be anywhere. Let's say you don't see Cassandra, right? So now if you just count allies, if you were to go on Baron, you would have 4 allies, and there's potentially 5 enemies on Baron, which means, okay, this is a 4v5 if I join. I do not want to join it. So I want to do something else. In this case, we push the mid wave, we get a turret, a second turret if you have time, right? And after that, we could transfer into like wolves, blue buff, gromp, and then who knows, maybe there's a bot wave, you want to take the bot wave, then we recall with like 1,000 more gold in our bag, right? That's an amazing decision you could make. It happens a lot more often than you think. Also, if you think you could somehow contest 4v5, right? Most of the time, I would say just go mid, that's the correct play. But I want you to just commit to your decisions. Think about what's happening, count your allies, count your enemies, and make a decision and stick with it. Because if you don't stick to your decision, you are just relying on your teammates to make the correct decisions for you. So you learn nothing, right? If you, instead of going mid here, you go on the Baron and you commit to it, and you just lose the game, or like the fight dramatically, okay, next time this situation happens, you remember that I joined the 4v5 and we lost. So this time I'm gonna go on mid instead and see what happens. And you're gonna see, you're gonna find more success. And there's plenty of examples like this. Another great example is, let's say you have like 3,000 gold in your bag right now, and you wanna ping your teammates to back off, and you wanna recall to buy your Infinity Edge, for example. Don't do that. If your allies are doing something actively on tempo, interacting with enemies, no matter what it is, you do not recall. You stay, you do something as well. You join the fight, you push a turret, right? Because worst thing that could happen is you recall, your allies kind of go for a fight. Oh, Senna gets caught, Senna dies. You start walking up, allies back off, right? And now allies are kind of backing off. You came back, Senna is dead. Who knows what's gonna happen? We're playing 4v5. But instead, imagine we stood there with our teammates, S5, and they take a 5v5. And we win because you stayed, right? Extra number advantage. Especially if, let's say, Udyr wasn't here. Udyr was here maybe, right? In this case, we would win a 5v4 easily if you stay with your teammates. You don't need your extra item. But if you recall, now there's a chance your teammates lose. So that's why I never want to recall if your allies are doing something. And this is another great reason why mechanics don't actually matter. A lot of players in lower ELOs think about their mechanics too much. They want to become like Fairy. They want to dodge every single skill shot. But guess what? If you take a fight that looks like this, a 5v4, no matter what you do, you can just walk up to them basic attack, you're going to win that fight. Because an extra number, when it comes to League Champions, is massive. You're automatically going to win this fight no matter what, no matter how bad you played mechanically. That's just how it is. So this is why macro is more important than good mechanics. Mechanics don't really help you. This is why Yumi players can get challenger after all, right? But if you do find yourself in a 5v5 situation, what you want to do is keep in mind what the enemies could do to you, right? In this example, we just think basically like in the early game. In this game, they have a Blitzcrank hook and an Orianna ultimate. That's kinda it, right? Udyr is just gonna run around, Draven is just gonna deal basic attack damage, Cassandra is just gonna be a frontline, whatever, sure, we don't want to get close to him, right? But as long as we dodge the Orianna ult and the Blitzcrank hook, the fight is just straightforward, front to back, follow your teammates, be with them, right? They can't really do much to you. That's all you have to think about it. And if you replace these champions with something else, let's say they don't have Orianna, they have Yone, right? You just gotta think about, okay, Yone has ulti. As long as you dodge those powerful abilities, you should be fine in the teamfights. But again, your goal in League is to take those 5v4 fights, 3v2, 5v3. That's how you win. And always remember, League is about consistency, good habits, and patience. You just want to take the good fights, don't join the bad fights, and listen to yourself, listen to your decisions. It'll be okay. Okay? So just focus on what's important, and I'm sure some of these mistakes you are making in your games. If you're in your early place, you're gonna see exact same thing. You're gonna recall when you have gold, but allies are doing things, and who knows what, right? But what's most important is to just stick to what you know, stick to your habits, stick to good decisions. And listen to yourself, not your teammates. You are the only thing you can change in your games.